I'm sure by now one probably wonders how I come up with the information for these videos, and I can honestly say it's based almost entirely off of my personal experience, hearsay, and the opinions of more advanced or veteran players in the Discord or Reddit. I know I might at times seem like a bit of an egoist who assumes that he is right about everything, but I truly do listen to everybody's opinion, and I do allow my beliefs to be swayed on certain subjects, and today's explanation of certain internal security laws will prove that fact. Of course, much like every other list that I put out thus far, I do have my personal favorites, but I truly believe that only one of these laws is outright useless, while the others are stars of the show in their own special way. Sadly, in this video, people who happen to be fans of Guaranteed Liberties might not like the many criticisms that I am about to throw its way, so I do have to warn everybody ahead of time. Please, brace yourselves, this will not be all sunshine and rainbows. However, before we begin, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Please also leave a comment down below telling me which internal security law is your favorite, as well as telling me why I'm wrong about everything and I should be struck by a meteorite for daring to make this video in the first place. Finally, I'd also like to thank my YouTube Premium and Patreon members. You guys help keep the lights on. And now that I have all the free time in the universe, I'm going to make you guys feel like you're getting your money's worth every darn day. Anyhow, this intro has gone on long enough, so let's get into the video. This one should come off as a bit of a no-brainer. This law, or rather, lack of law, is nothing more than a placeholder meant to serve as something that you're meant to get off of eventually. Nobody legitimately actually looks at this law and thinks, yeah, this could be a meta. However, there are a few situations where staying on no home affairs can actually be somewhat beneficial to your gameplay. Qing, for instance, begins with such a massive bureaucracy debt that taking any of the internal security laws is a massive detriment that will hamper your playstyle greatly. That does mean that the absence of something can actually be quite beneficial overall. Of course, you're very likely to change your mind once you get telephones as China and have more than enough bureaucracy to no longer care about the cost, but that comes much, much later in the game. So, while I can tease and chirp about this lack of a law all day, even the absence of something is still worth something. And while I won't go into any greater detail, no home affairs isn't completely worthless, just mostly. At least it doesn't hurt you to have it enacted, which is more than I can say for another entry on today's list. Here we go. National Guard. It might cause a little alarm to those of you who are new to Victoria 3, but one of the most unassuming laws to get in the game, somehow, someway, ended up becoming one of the most meta laws in the game, particularly in multiplayer. You're probably wondering how that is even possible. Not only is National Guard really easy to enact because it was clearly designed to be a stepping stone law towards the other two in the end, but it's also restricted by only having 3 institution levels for internal security, again, because it was intended to be a stepping stone law. Well, despite being one of the easiest laws in the game to actually enact from the beginning, National Guard also happens to have some of the best benefits of all the internal security laws that are offered to you in return for not being able to fill the final 2 institution levels. First of all, you get up to -15 drought, flood, wildfire, and extreme winds harvest condition impact reduction, making natural disasters a little less of a catastrophe when they do happen. Ironically, this is something that neither of the final 2 internal security laws actually have, immediately putting them at a bit of a disadvantage at first glance. However, the real star of the show and the real reason why people end up taking National Guard over any of the other internal security laws is because it gives you a plus 0.5% conscription rate per level, which can be brought up to a whopping 1.5% at level 3 Home Affairs institution. For countries that just so happen to go peasant levies, national militia, or even mass conscription, this is in fact a massive boon, and it can result in a few dozen or even an extra few hundred soldiers on top of your already beefy number of conscripts. Strangely enough, this is also a bonus that is not afforded to either of the other internal security laws, which inexplicably makes the latter more difficult laws to pass, far less appealing to the eyes of a warmonger or defender who desire a beefy army to conquer or protect with. To be perfectly honest, I think they accidentally overtuned National Guard by not really touching it when they ruined the other two, and it does not surprise me in the least when National Guard ends up being the favorite of so many other players. I myself will often stay on National Guard if I plan on going for and actually using mass conscription later on in the game, but it is not my personal favorite. I really only called this one a meta because so many people say it is, and frankly, I do agree. They're not wrong. National Guard is so powerful, it might as well be meta. For some weird reason, secret police is rarely talked about on the forums, Reddit, or even the Discord. Perhaps the fact that National Guard was raised up on the podium as the best of the best had completely overshadowed secret police, which requires central archives to even become available. However, I am here to tell you that this is not a bad law by any measure. Not only are you afforded the final 2 Home Affairs institution investments, but secret police does not restrict you in any way, shape, or form, making it a very viable and effective endgame internal security law to have for people who want to have that extra minus 10% political movement activism reduction from the level 5 Home Affairs institution. In a way, it is actually quite comedic that the overlay's otherwise very colorful design, including many pop-ups to explain home affairs, political strength, and progression speed, did an absolutely abhorrent job showcasing one of the secret powers of the secret police. At the very bottom of the overlay is a bland, white text that has 0 pop-ups to explain what anything actually means. On it, it says, unlocks the arrange accident character interaction, something you'd have absolutely no idea about were you to never actually activate the secret police. What this interaction actually is a third way to get rid of agitators and leaders that you do not like. While you can always imprison or exile your agitators or exile your leaders, assuming you don't have laws that prevent you from doing so, with Arrange Accident you can permanently get rid of agitators or leaders that you do not like with a minor risk of getting caught attributed to the action. To me, Arrange Accident is a fantastic action which pairs well with laws like Parliamentary Republic, and for players who are constantly trying to swap leaders in and out of office for the sake of getting specific traits from the president, Arrange Accident makes secret police a powerful internal security law to keep in your back pocket. Another benefit to secret police that makes it one of my personal favorite laws to enact in the game is the relative ease of passing it in comparison to other laws. Much like public health insurance or colonial exploitation, there are a bevy of debate options that will give you a significant boost to your success rate during the enactment of this law. Even a 5% chance to pass may as well be seen as a 35% chance to pass after the bonuses are through with you. Well, there you go. Now you know the reason why secret police remains my personal favorite internal security law. While it does not give you the massive amount of extra conscripts like National Guard, it does not have any of the detriments that Guaranteed Liberties does either. Now, speaking of detriments, Guaranteed Liberties is perhaps one of the biggest new player traps in all of Victoria 3. Everybody will see it at the bottom of the list and they will immediately think that must be the best home affair law by default. Unfortunately, Guaranteed Liberties doesn't actually tell you the whole story in its overlay. It is neglecting to inform you upfront that you lose access to the all-important violent suppression decree, which, for people who conquer overseas or end up with turmoil anywhere in their country, is a huge penalty to suffer for very little gain. In all honesty, to me, there is nothing worse than having a recently conquered state with an unaccepted population that just so happens to also have no infrastructure and high turmoil due to the devastation from the conquest and the ineptitude of the previous AI that owned it, only to have your private sector decide to build 50 railways on that state at a minus 95% construction efficiency, and you cannot even slightly improve that problem by using violent suppression because of this stupid law. That adds up to a whopping 10 years of waiting for either the situation to improve on that state, usually through incorporation, or for your private sector to stop wasting all your valuable construction by finishing those damn railways. Once more, to me, in the current patch of 198, losing access to violent suppression is quite possibly one of the worst things that can happen to you in Victoria 3, and it actually puts Guaranteed Liberties in the camp as one of the worst laws in the game as far as I'm concerned. So, what do you get in return for losing violent suppression? Well, Guaranteed Liberties doesn't actually give you anything over the secret police except an increase in the number of loyalists that you get from political movements. Whoop-de-doo. A paltry return for what you give up. You'll likely have very few radicals by the point you can get level 3 or higher home affairs anyways, and an extra 25% loyalists from political movements will not make that much of a difference even if you needed the extra help. If you couldn't tell by the disdainful way that I speak about Guaranteed Liberties, this is actually the law I was referring to as being outright useless. I cannot say enough bad things about this law. The only value that I get from enacting this law is by canceling it right away to get some liberal movement agitation. I spit on this law. Paradox, you need to address this law because it is outright brokenly bad right now. You over-nerfed it, bring back the standard of living bonus. For how difficult it can be to pass in certain countries because you need right of assembly or protected speech to even be able to start this law in the first place, Guaranteed Liberties is one of the only laws in this game that actively hurts you, and it provides almost no benefit in return for what you lose. What a joke. I'd like to thank everybody for watching this far into the video, especially after I went out of my way to insult an inexplicably popular law like Guaranteed Liberties. I just felt I had to be a bit hyperbolic to get my point across, so please, try not to take it too personally if you're one of the people who happens to like that law. I typically do tier lists, rants, and playthroughs, so if you're actually interested in that sort of thing, please click here to watch my most recent playthrough where I steal 13,373 buildings through nationalization as China. Anyhow, good night, and I hope you enjoy playing Victoria 3 in spite of my ramblings. Make sure to give your loved ones an extra hug tonight because they might not be here tomorrow, and always remember, Hail Hydra Cat.